I have a solo record that is actually my 13th album and will mark 2007, the 20th anniversary of my recording career, which makes me 32. I'm working with Steve Lillywhite, who's the illustrious, was the Grammy-winning producer of the year. He's worked with a lot of bands that have sold lots of records, but also, as I was finding out and kind of researching Steve Lillywhite, he's made a lot of records that didn't sell a lot, some of which are my favorite records, and have had a great time working with him. This is a new thing for me, really going into working on a solo record, largely with studio musicians and one or two people that I knew going into it. But it's varied. It's been a really productive and quick process, and I've had a great time. I think throughout the years, even from the very beginnings of Soundgarden, which started in 1984, I've written songs in their entirety for different bands that I've been in, also for myself, for no purposes at all, just for fun. A lot of things I've done alone for movies. I've done incidental music for movies. I did a first solo record in 1999. Temple of the Dog, which was 1990, really at the time was considered a Chris Cornell solo record until other members of the band became one of the biggest bands in the world. Then it kind of became something else, but it was something where 7 out of the 10 songs I had written in my spare time. So this record really is kind of just the next step in me getting back into a room alone and writing songs by myself and multi-tracking demos and really just kind of experimenting with music in a way that I think you only can when you're alone. I think bands, in terms of songwriting, there are individuals playing off of each other and their ideas, but to really, experiment where a song can go in a singer-songwriter way is really something that you have to do alone. I think this record will, it's friends. It will coexist with my first solo record. I think that it echoes certain aspects of my influences over the years, things that you might hear like Beatles influences in a song like Black Hole Sun, for example. There are R&B kind of gospel or soul influences, some of which have come through on different Audioslave records, or Temple of the Dog, for example, or even Soundgarden. So there are bits of that, and then there's also new territory, which is something that I do every time I make a record. I think it's something that just keeps me inspired, keeps me satisfied and going and wanting to make more and more music. On this record, it kind of started with writing songs for a movie called Bug, which is directed by Billy Friedkin, who did French Connection and The Exorcist, and I had screened the film, was really excited about doing a song for it. I ended up writing 2 songs for it, one of which they used, and that kind of got me into the mode of sitting alone and writing and coming up with a lot of stuff very quickly. And I knew right away that it was time for me to start getting into making my own records again and writing alone again. And in that way, really, it's any way and any mood that strikes me, that inspires me to write a song, is the way that I'll do it. I don't think I have one conventional way of doing things. Oftentimes I'll write the music and a large part of the lyrics entirely in my head and then kind of adapt it to guitar later and then maybe record a demo that way. I always spend most of my time demoing alone in like the spare room in my house, just kind of during the day. It's a very organic process where I'm the only one there and I'm kind of engineering it and doing it. With today's technology, sometimes I'm using demoing and recording as part of the writing process. It's really easy nowadays to actually write and record a song and make a CD or even upload it onto your own MySpace page, and all in the course of a few hours. And so that's something that I've really enjoyed doing. I think the studio is also a great environment for writing, but for what I do, when it becomes like the soloist kind of singer-songwriter, it's really nice to just have complete quiet and be alone in a room. all the songs on this record were written and demoed by myself at home and at various times over the last year, whether we were living in Los Angeles or in Paris. Steve Lillywhite really, as a producer, obviously is responsible for the production of records that have sold, I'm sure, well over 100 million, which is a staggering number. But as a guy where sometimes the producer that big can come in and sort of be the star of the show versus the band, he's really a normal guy. Shows up, drives himself to the studio, brings in a backpack. He's very aware of everyone else in the studio, all the way down to like the studio seconds and assistants, make sure everyone is happy. It treats everyone like an equal, is very focused on the project all the time. Has great instincts, and obviously years and years and years of experience to draw from. And with a producer, that doesn't just mean music or musical arrangements, it also means in dealing with people. And I've learned a lot from him and had a great time working with him so far. I think being a recording artist, really, and part of it is obviously touring and performing to people all over the world, which in the beginning of my career was something that I felt took me out of the studio, took me out of the songwriting process, and was something that I found difficult. Over time, I think I started to understand and accept the privilege that comes with it, to be able to travel around the world and play music. For example, going to Cuba with Audioslave and playing in front of 70,000 people that have not ever seen an American rock band perform outside. My perspective on it now is that I'm extremely lucky to be able to travel the world and to play music for people anywhere that want to hear it, and I'm excited to spend the rest of my career doing that as well as making records. There, anywhere where I can go and play music for people that want to hear it, I intend to go and do. The food is just shit. No. My brother-in-law Nick Blast is a very successful club owner in Paris, and my wife Vicky and Nicholas were looking at a space to open yet another club, and it really was a space that I think lent itself more to a restaurant, and they come from a family of restaurateurs, and I actually come from the restaurant profession before I was a professional musician, and that idea appealed to me a lot. Also, it's really a nice thing to be involved in a community where we have a restaurant and a club that's just right next to where we live. We're part of the neighborhood. Being a musician where you're touring around the world all the time, I've really never been a part of a community before, and that's something that makes me feel more like I have a home. And it also has given us an opportunity to have a restaurant and a bar where we play pretty much nothing but rock music all the time. And rock music all the time in an environment like that is not something that you find particularly in Paris, and people really love it. So it's really great to be able to bring that aspect of what I do into it as well. It's a pretty varied record. I mean, I still think of it, I suppose, as a singer-songwriter record. All the basic tracks were recorded literally with upright acoustic bass, acoustic guitar, vocals and drums, and then a lot of electric instruments added later. The song "You Know My Name" for the latest Bond film will be on the record. There are other surprises. There's a cover I do of Michael Jackson's "Billie Jean" that's going to be on the record, which you sort of have to hear to understand it. It's one of those moments, I think, like when Johnny Cash did a cover of the song I wrote for Soundgarden, "Rusty Cage," completely different. But it shined a different light on it, and particularly on the lyrics. And that's something that I did on this song, just based on a conversation I was having with my wife about the art of a cover song. And I tried to just imagine the most unlikely song that I could do and reinvent and make my own. And that song came to mind, and it's something that I found really enjoyable to sing. It became a very emotional song, and there's a lot of that on this record. So that there's a lot, I think, for people that they can expect as Chris Cornell music, but also a lot of surprises.